Well, good evening and welcome to Move Early, Move Often, another Move Early, Move Often chat. I'm Blake Martin, and with me is Dr. Thomas Karakolis.
Hey, Blake, how's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
So
What did you want to talk
today,
about today?
today we kind of want to talk a little bit about the importance of um, taking care of our musculoskeletal system every
Mm,
single day and making
mm,
sure that we do something like some sort of healthy movement every single day. I know there are people online and even in the scientific literature, this idea of movement hygiene has come into play. And I know I don't think you're necessarily in love with the term, and I don't know if I love it yet, but the concept of making sure that we have daily activities or something as part of our daily routine to make sure that we take care of our musculoskeletal system in the same way that we brush our teeth every day to take care of our teeth or we have hair care or skin care types of hygiene regimens or even showering every day to make sure we're
sure.
taking care of our body odor. So
So,
um,
so, so before we go any further, and I think this is a really important thing to talk about, but before we go further, I want to tell you what my objection was, just so it's really clear.
yeah, no, definitely. I shouldn't have left
My
that
my
open.
objection was okay. So when we were trying to come up with dreaming up what would we call the moments that we have on the memo channel, were we going to call them exercise? And no, we definitely did not want to call them exercise because um, that first of all, it kind of prioritizes um, exercise over all kinds of other kinds of activity. And I'm not sure that I really believe that that's a good idea at all. But then, yeah, so the word hygiene. So was it a hygiene sesh or, was it, like a mental floss day or, so I just wondered about that. But I
Yeah,
really love this idea of movement hygiene and I just kind of go through when you're thinking about movement hygiene, and you mentioned a bunch of things. You mentioned like the regular things that we do, flossing our teeth or showering or those sorts of things. So, what would be these analogous things in the movement hygiene world? What sorts of things would we do for movement hygiene?
yeah, I guess. And so another reason why I think I'm not in love with the term, I'll just take a step back. I'll answer your question in a second, Blake. But the idea of like movement hygiene, I don't like it being compared or confused with the idea like so nerve flossing is an example that you'll see in some of the I don't know if it's physiotherapists or chiro types of fields. And so there are terms that get used that come from the hygiene space
Right.
into the musculoskeletal space. So I understand that. So I do like this idea of just calling them daily movement sessions to make sure that we're moving every single day.
Right.
And the types of stuff that we try and do basically follow our last chat with the ideas of the movements of the day. But I think the biggest thing that I like to focus on personally, and I think is important for a lot of people, is this idea of making sure that we maintain our range of motion. Because I noticed
Mm,
as I'm aging,
yeah.
I'm continuing to lose range of motion,
Right.
especially in my shoulders.
Yeah.
Also, my lower extremities, my hamstrings, everything seems to get tighter as I age, and I'm not sure if that's partly part of the natural aging process, but also partly because I'm not necessarily always challenging my range of motion the same way I was when I was younger. So the biggest one to me is those Twisted Tuesdays I really like because that's where we're really making sure that we challenge our joint range of motion.
Right. So, range of motion might be a hygiene practice. And then, what else do you see as being hygienic?
Well, doing stuff to try and exercise or challenge your smaller stabilizing muscle. So on the
Right.
last chat, you spoke quite a bit in some of the core stabilizers, and you said that I would have a lot to say about
Yeah.
things like that. And I do think that's really important. So doing almost simpler, less complex types of exercise that really work on core stability and don't necessarily always have the dynamic movements that we would do on like a momentum Monday, for example. I think those are also really important. And as we get older and our lives get busier and more complex, I'm not sure we take the time to to essentially challenge those stabilizer muscles as much as we do on like a wobbly Wednesday, for example. You've done some great wobbly Wednesdays where you really get everyone to focus and challenge those stabilizer muscles.
So you're using the word core stabilizer muscles, and I think do you, like a lot of people, I think of the abs when they think of core stabilizers. Is that what you mean when you're saying it, or do you mean something else?
I'm thinking more internal muscles, so your abs or your obliques or whatever muscles that are kind of on the surface that you can see are generally your bigger muscles and sometimes are more often primary movers. And there's some debate, and obviously I wouldn't suggest that you should use your abs or your obliques as primary movers. That's probably going to create a lot of flexion, extension, and lateral bending in your lumbar spine that you definitely don't want. But like a muscle, for example, or some of those deeper tissue muscles that you're looking that are closer to your spinal column, and those are things that are really often neglected or not challenged as much as they should be for people who work out in a more traditional fashion.
Yeah. Do you like so? Do you think of the muscles like even up in the neck, like some of the smaller muscles that are really close to the vertebral column? Do you think of those as being core muscles as well?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So especially people with chronic neck pain. So I've done a lot of my work looking at chronic neck pain in air crew, for example. Like the upper erector spinae, for example,
Yeah,
would probably be fit into that category. And if you have anytime, even like computer work, for example, where you have this kind of prolonged, extended neck posture
yeah,
that I'm trying to do a little bit of a job of demonstrating, that probably
right.
wasn't good because that was probably a better posture than I was adopting even before. Um, yeah. So it doesn't just have to be your low back, your lumbar spine type of area. This could be throughout your entire body. And I always kind of default to lumbar spine because it's where my expertise really lies. But um,
Right.
every joint, I think, has some sort of analogous type of muscle that you really want to work on these stabilizers. What other joints are you thinking of, Blake?
Well, no, no, what I was, so I've heard it described this way. You know how you, in a pear, you have the core of the pear where the actual seeds of the pear are. But if you munch right down, there's like these little fibrous things that go extend all the way up to the top of the pear to the stem and all the way down to the bottom of the pear where that part of the flower was. And those little things, those are so close to the center, and the core extends all the way up and all the way down, and it's not the big meaty parts of the skeletal muscle that we're looking at, but these tiny ones that are responsible for fine motor control and setting limbs into positions and getting them right where they need to be so that they can be so that the limb can do the more powerful thing that it needs to do, be like with the prime movement, so that when those big movements come along, you're well set up for that. So that's kind of my understanding of it. And obviously, I don't have the same background as you do in terms of that research knowledge, but that's the way I understood it. So I really see it that way too. And so even on some of the days, we'll spend time on our hands and knees and we'll just kind of move around on a quad in a quad
Mm-hmm.
position and just kind of work on getting those little muscles just activating so that we can be better. And I guess also when I think of the core, I sometimes think of like the muscles of the diaphragm and the pelvic floor that are
Yeah.
also involved in kind of holding our guts in, keeping us from exploding outward. And then there's this one muscle that kind of goes across our abdominal cavity. It's called the transversus abdominis, and
Mm-hmm.
it has this whole role in kind of holding us from our guts from going everywhere. And it's
Yeah.
really important for that stuff.
Yeah, no, so I agree with all the points that you made, and I think that the message here that I'm hoping is coming across is like is how important actually working on these parts of your musculoskeletal system really are. And
Yeah.
so the broader context that I think we're hopefully going to try and get across in this chat is the idea of turning it into habit to make sure that we're always making these muscles work enough so that they don't end up atrophying on us, or weakening, or not functioning the way that they properly should. So I think bringing it back to the whole hygiene
Yeah.
concept, hygiene's like a daily habitual thing that we do. And I think part of what I really like about the memo program that we've got going here is that there is a daily aspect where it's for you and me now, it's habitual. Every single morning
Yeah.
we wake up, we're logged on by 8:15, and we're doing some sort of movement to train our musculoskeletal system, or to keep our musculoskeletal system trained.
Yeah. Unfortunately for the rest of you, you don't get it uploaded until a little bit later in the day. But yeah, we're there at 8:15, and we're doing this together, and recording. Um, so if you think of hygiene, would you include things like I don't know, like movement habits, maybe even bad movement habits, so that we're maybe trying to rid ourselves of ways of sitting or ways of standing? Would that fall into that sort of thing as well?
Yeah, oh yeah, like habitual things like not staying seated for a prolonged period. I would also put that under whatever the label we want to call this, if hygiene's not the best word for it. But the idea of getting into the habit of not sitting for more than an hour straight, let's say, or not.
What would you recommend?
The ideal situation would be that you would do something dynamic at least once an hour. I know that's not feasible for everybody depending on their
Right.
work environment. A lot of us are working from home right now, especially given the current pandemic situation. So if you can't do that, even just gross posture alteration. So if you can have a sit to stand desk, alternating from sitting to standing, or last Friday, you did a great functional Friday where you show that you can adopt a kneeling posture for a period of time, or you
Yeah.
can adopt a lunging posture for a period of time, and just making sure that we're not static in any one posture, because you showed last Friday that there are pros and cons of every single posture you demonstrated. There's a lot of, when you're kneeling, for example, there's a lot of
Mm.
pressure on your knees. So
Yep.
that's not great for your knees,
Yep.
but ideally your spinal posture is a little bit better. So making sure that we're cognizant of the trade-offs that we're making every time we select a posture, and then trading our postures off as often as possible. And
Right.
ideally getting that dynamic activity, like going up and down the stairs, or going for a walk, or hopefully even going for a run if you're able to do that. Those are the kind of things that I think could also fit into the hygiene umbrella. What are your
Right.
thoughts, Blake?
I think that you've touched on a lot of it, and that's why, that's part of the reason why I do actually like the hygiene term. We also played with the idea of saying a movement snack, and
Yeah.
and there's parts of that I like as well. But there's part of me likes this idea of the habit of thoughtfully and deliberately caring for your body,
Hmm.
and trying to make parts of it better, without the idea that there's so much about workout culture and exercise culture that's about, yeah, getting to a point of pain, or getting to just mindlessness,
Hmm.
and just working out really hard. And um, I want the mindful parts of our activity to be reinserted, and hygiene really conveys that idea. So I think there's a lot that's very good in that word. And so, yeah, definitely I'd love to see us having improved movement practice, and also changing postures, I think is really critical throughout the day, especially when we're at home. These little bursts of activity. At our place of work, we have a chat that is up all day, and people will just jump on, and they'll say, I'm going to run up and down the stairs for 5 minutes, or I'm
Yep.
doing 5 flights of steps followed by 5 push-ups. Who's in? Or I'm having a dance party at three
People
o'clock.
love your dance parties, Blake.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll figure out a way to do that here with the channel as well. Maybe we'll Facebook or
The
something like
community, you
that.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
community. We're not starting a channel, Blake. This is
That's true.
a
That's true. Okay. Yeah.
movement
Okay.
community.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
last thing I want to just add before we wrap up here is I do like what you pointed out about exercise culture, and the reason why we don't call these workouts or exercise is
Right.
it's not the idea of beating up your body. We don't
Yeah.
ever want to necessarily encourage that, because a lot of people don't need to increase their strength and cause a lot of tissue damage.
Right.
So the hygiene analogy comes back. It's like when you're brushing your teeth, you're not brushing your teeth just for making your gums bleed, right? To make them
That's what
stronger.
flossing is for.
Yeah, where guys like us who I only floss like once a month or once every couple months, of course my gums are going to bleed every time I do it. But that's so in that sense, the analogy is not a good analogy. Like, sorry, that's all I've got. Like, if you have anything else to add.
No, I think you've really nailed it. And I think you've hit on some really important points that these are practices that we're doing to care for our bodies and to nurture it, to coach it to be better, to find ways out of being stuck, to find new ways of movement, and ultimately to care for ourselves and be healthy. And I think that's you've captured a lot of that in this discussion about movement hygiene. And I do love the term. And as we've been saying it over the course of this chat, I've come to like it a lot more. And
It's growing on me too.
yeah, actually, it's growing on me. So I might only talk about movement hygiene for the rest of my life now. I don't know.
We'll see, man. We'll see.
One step at a time, right?
Yeah. Perfect. All right, this is a good chat. Thanks very much.
Yeah, a really good chat. I'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you
Cheers.
next week.
Bye bye.
Bye.